It's already 5:05 until 7. There's always a lot to cover. We can call the meeting to order. 5:05. Roll call. Joyce is not here. Dana.
Here.
Dave Jones.
Here.
David.
Here.
How do you say your last name again? Kiemeyer. Christina. Here. Sheridan.
Here. Right.
And Terry.
Here.
First item
You're fine.
isn't even really on the agenda, but
Strange.
welcome Christina Levin, the newest member of the Sustainability Advisory Board. Christina, do you want to take a minute and introduce yourself?
Yeah, probably 15 seconds. My name is Christina. I'm new to Ridgway 2.5 years now. Permanent home as far as I can tell. Saw the sustainability opportunity, so thanks for even being here. And it's part of a passion of my life for any which way I could support. So thank you.
Great. Welcome. Yeah, formally appointed to the board at the last town council meeting in March. So yeah, again, welcome. The first item on the agendas is for folks from Eco Action Partners to have the floor and talk about all things Eco Action Partners, Nepal Energy Board, Energy Board Code Cohort. It's a lot there, and any of the other initiatives.
Yeah.
Take the floor.
Hi, everyone. I know some of you. I'm Siobhan, and I'm with Eco Action Partners, new as of January. I am from the region, but I just moved back this summer after a long time away. And so I'm now with Eco Action, and I was hired specifically to help with climate action plan implementation. We have this wonderful climate action plan, and just looking for ways we can unblock and help, especially with jurisdictions that don't have dedicated staff, how we can help them kind of overcome hurdles and turn plan into action. There's a lot being done already, so I feel very lucky that I'm coming into a high energy, high work area. But yeah, my background is in environmental compliance for major utilities and in carbon removal.
Carbon
Say that
what?
so many times.
Carbon removal.
Carbon removal technology. So I
Such as
all of them, such as direct air capture, biochar, and ocean alkalinity enhancement. Yeah, I could go on. Don't start me on the diatribe. But then I think also, yes, working with utilities for a lot of years out in California, doing environmental compliance. And so unfortunately, Kim is not with us, and Kim has lots to update around.
she'll be with us real soon.
She'll be with us real soon. Okay. So I'll let her kind of hop in on that. But I'm here to kind of learn where you guys are at with the SAB and how I can be supportive and make sure our initiatives are working with yours. Oh, and here comes Kim joining now. So I know Kim has to run because we have an event happening in Telluride. So I will let her go quickly because I know you got to run, Kim, and then I can follow up with some climate action plan stuff. Hi, Kim.
There we go. Now, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was trying to rename myself from Eco Action Partners, but I can't figure that out either right now.
Welcome. Thanks for being here, Kim.
Yes, thank you. Apologize for being late to join. I was on a meeting with the Colorado Energy Office about our energy code cohort. So things are just running a little bit over constantly today. But I'm glad Siobhan can be there in person. It's super helpful. She can be there to meet you all.
Yeah, I'm happy to kind of update about our last meeting with the Snuffles Energy Board. But Kim, if you wanted to kind of dig into building code stuff first, just because I know you're on a time crunch, and then I can talk about Snuffles Energy Board work plan.
That sounds great. So just a really brief overview. The Regional Energy Code cohort meetings. We've had our 5th meeting to cover topics that jurisdictions might want to adopt as amendments. We are waiting on the State Energy Code Board, which I am also on, to develop our final amendment package or the final code package at the state level. so that then locally, we're not creating amendments for language that's already going to be changed at the state. There's a few things that have been kind of going back and forth and around. So we don't yet have an amendment package ready, but once we do, which we'll be developing that by the end of May, then we'll be having another regional energy code cohort meeting for everybody to give their input on what we develop as an amendment code package to the state code, which should be mostly final at that point. So if that kind of gives you a time frame. And I think the one thing that would be really helpful to focus on this evening would be the potential for Ridgway to adopt an all-electric amendment. I think Telluride is the only other jurisdiction that would be entertaining that idea in this code round. But from some of the feedback that we've heard when interviewing trades people, engineers, designers, architects, etc., as well as looking at the materials that support all electric or that compare all electric and the cost implications and etc., that there's a very strong there's very strong support in all the documentation to support that idea. So I kind of wanted to kick it off with a little bit of a broad view of that. I thought I would go through, I know, Dave, I sent you all of, just kind of a summarized grouping of all of the different all-electric materials that I've gathered over the months or years that we've been talking about this. I'm happy to go through maybe the suite presentation and the information from Crested Butte showing cost comparison as just a starting point, and then we can have more conversation if that sounds like a good plan.
Kim, just to clarify, so one of the amendments you're working on would be that specific to call it a stretch goal for the code adoption to have an all-electric for new construction, residential, commercial, et cetera. That's one of the primary.
Yeah, and from looking at the other, at least Crested Butte and the draft language that has been developed by our team so far, it's actually really simple. It's a really straightforward, let me see if I can share that particular page that I came up with. Oh, I think I put the language in the email though, of just, you know, a definition of an all-electric building. And then there's that definition, and then an amendment for residential and an amendment for commercial that simply says all residential buildings shall be all electric buildings, and same with commercial. And I think what we had talked about potentially for Ridgway would be a all residential buildings shall be all electric by or starting such and such date, so that the code could be adopted in advance. And if you didn't want to start enforcing that, let's just say Ridgway wants to adopt and start enforcing the new code January 1st, but wants to allow for a longer time frame to enforce all electric. And in the meantime, it's the electric ready code from the state that would be applicable. Then we could have that date of a future time frame within the amendment that Ridgway could adopt. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I also noticed in one of the presentations, just not to distract you, there was on one slide, there was a definition of net zero that was adopted by one of the organizations. That's something we're also looking to, you know, figure out how to define for the resolution that we're going to be putting in front of town council. Is it, by the way, is this coming meeting for first reading?
Well, it's just a resolution, so it doesn't
Right.
require 2 readings, but.
Okay. And it doesn't require that we put the definition into the resolution, but it will be part of the roadmap is to codify that definition.
Correct.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. So are you saying that Ridgway is interested in adopting net zero as an additional amendment that we could include in the full amendment package?
Well, we're introducing, the SAB is introducing a resolution to town council to adopt the goal of reaching net zero by 2030.
Oh, gotcha.
Specific to Ridgway operations. the town operations as an example for the community to follow. And then we also mentioned that the SAB will be adopting a net zero roadmap. So a lot of what you sent today, which by the way was forwarded to us, is highly applicable to some of our internal initiatives here.
Okay, that's super helpful. Yeah, and I think the resolution or ordinance that you were looking at was the one that I forwarded over from Crested Butte. And there's, I think the distinction between net zero for big picture versus net zero requirements for an individual home to be constructed. And I think that that's what they had in their code was every single home shall be all electric and net zero, if I'm understanding and remembering correctly. And we hadn't talked about that as a potential amendment in our code cohort yet, but if that is of interest, we could certainly include that language as an option for construction of individual buildings.
I don't think that, we're just looking at making the town net zero by 2030.
Okay,
And encourage, we'll encourage the other. The low carbon code that you mentioned earlier is the required implementation of that. Is that going to be this summer or the summer after?
so the low carbon code is required to be adopted after July 1st, 2026, if a jurisdiction adopts any updated codes on or after that date.
Right. Okay. So it's a year from now. Right.
However, the goal within our grant, and in order for the jurisdictions to get compensated for their efforts, our timeline for adoption is prior to June 30th of 2026. So locally and regionally, our goal is for every jurisdiction, except for the two that aren't participating, to adopt new codes before the end of next June.
New codes, but that includes the low carbon?
That includes the low carbon, because once you've adopted, we're aiming toward this low carbon code versus adopting something that's going to be outdated very soon.
Sure.
We could have gone for the 2021 and the Just the Electric Ready first, and then had the low carbon code out there. But we figured that, and everybody was in agreement that if we were going to go for the grant and go for the cohort and go through all this effort, it's a lot of effort for every jurisdiction to update codes regardless. And we typically are lucky for each jurisdiction to go through a 6-year adoption process, or to adopt every 6 years. So we figured we'd go for the more advanced rather than adopting something that will be outdated.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Kim, couple questions. Who are the two communities not participating?
The city of Ridgway and the town of Ophir.
No, okay. I was just curious. And then talk a little bit about the community engagement piece. I know there are some, I don't know if they're characterized as workshops or charrettes or presentations scheduled for, I think, in May. Maybe after that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and let me just give a little bit more information on Ophir and Ridgway. Both jurisdictions didn't feel like they had the resources since they had just adopted the 2018 IECC last year. So that's primarily the reason. I'm essentially representing Ophir to keep Ophir up to speed, and City of Ridgway is invited, and all jurisdictions provided letters of support just to help give further information there.
Yeah,
Wanting to at least have everybody stay in the loop, even if they aren't participating with this go around or planning to adopt with this go around.
So they're a year behind the 6-year cycle now.
Yeah, they'll be behind, but you know, the legwork will have been done for them for when they're ready. Let's see, back to your question. Yes, so we are planning educational workshops that were funded through this grant opportunity. The first, we had a mechanical engineering contractor roundtable discussion in February. So bringing mechanical experts together into the same conversation, and talking quite a lot about heat pumps and other implications and challenges of the code and new technology with everybody in the same room. We're planning on hopefully being able to do another one in the fall because it was really effective and helpful to have their concerns brought out and them to be able to talk with each other, with heat pump experts in particular, as part of the conversation. We also had a mechanical expert talk about the importance of air sealing for ductwork and other testing requirements that are coming forth for mechanical equipment. Air infiltration, not air infiltration, sorry. Air ventilation, mechanical ventilation requirements that are part of the codes also. We're building the houses really tight, and then we have to ventilate them right with the right amount of airflow. So resolving questions around that. So that was mechanical roundtable discussions. We have a workshop coming up in May. We've just finalized date and location. We'll be having May 14th up here in Telluride, May 15th in Ridgway. That's geared toward, all of these are geared toward building officials to stay in the loop and on top of and informed. But this next one is more geared toward contractors, architects, designers, to cover more higher level building science items, or higher level topics related to mechanical systems like heat pumps, the aspects of heat pumps that need to be accommodated or addressed in the design phase or the building construction phase. It will focus on building science and the concepts and like continuous insulation and how to do it, and try to address some of the things that either are already in our codes but aren't being done or people are concerned about, or will be coming. And then we'll have another workshop next January after most of the jurisdictions have adopted their codes, once the specific amendments are known for each jurisdiction, so that we can cover code specific topics, that one. And then that's our plan for at least official workshops and trainings. There's also a lot of educational information out there from the state level, webinars and whatnot that are available for everybody as they need or desire to listen to or participate in. We've also been conducting informational interviews with different tradespeople. So builders from different jurisdictions, architects from different regions, and mechanical engineers from different regions, so we can get their input as to what's works for them with energy codes, what's challenging for them, what questions and concerns they might have, how they best learn about how to comply with codes, kind of getting their inputs that helps inform our process going forward.
Great.
Does that answer your question, Preston?
Yeah, thanks, Kim. And then you said it and I missed it. The final amendment, or not final amendment, or all the amendments will have been wrapped up at some point in May?
So the state finishes the and votes on the low carbon code mid-May. And once those decisions have been made, then we will work on finalizing the amendment package. So we anticipate having it finalized by the end of May, so that then we can start one-on-one conversations with jurisdictions related to what amendments would you, well, actually, before we start one-on-one, we'll hold another cohort meeting for everybody together to just talk about the amendments, make sure that the language works, that everybody is comfortable with what they want to adopt or was not applicable to their jurisdiction. And then we'll start one-on-one conversations for supporting each jurisdiction through the adoption process. Does that help?
It helps.
Okay. Great.
Kim, a couple quick things. I sent you a couple emails today. One was about maybe including some of the information on Ridgway. We're also having a cleanup day and an electronic recycling day. I saw the Eco Action newsletter come out earlier today. If you can check with either Preston or the SAB for updates before you put those out in the future. Second was, I don't know if you got it directly, but I forwarded it to you. The Mountain Town 2030, Chris sent out a request for elected officials to sign this letter in support of the IRA direct pay incentives, you know, the tax incentives I'm requesting if you could to forward that to all the elected officials in the SEB and to get it out there. I sent it to Gloria and Deanne earlier today, and Mayor Clark has seen it and he's signing it. And I think Preston's going to send it to the rest of the town council here, that there's an urgent need to get as many signatures on this bipartisan letter prior to the reconciliation bill, which is coming before Congress. And they're looking at axing a lot of these IRA tax credits, including for air source heat pumps and solar, and specific to SMPA and the town is the the direct pay ITC credit, which gives us nonprofits the ability to leverage that 30% tax credit for the, the big battery projects, the solar projects, et cetera. So if you can push that out to other elected officials, just in case they didn't see it. Team Gold, the collaboration of the year, needs to weigh in for sure. Right, for sure. Anyway, that's all I have. Sorry. Thanks.
Okay. Yes, thank you. We were, as a staff at Eco Action, we were trying to figure out how to provide the information that was requested to go into that letter, and it really seemed like it wasn't really applicable for us to provide, but we can certainly send it out to the SEB members for their.
Yeah, they finished drafting the letter. They referenced Breckenridge and a few other communities. They didn't reference the stuff we sent them from Ridgway. But nonetheless, there's a place to go ahead and for community leaders to sign it. I even forwarded it to SMPA. Hopefully the board of directors will get in there as a quote community leader. But even EAP, I think you guys could probably sign it because you're kind of community leaders with regards to the sustainability efforts. But take a look at that email.
Okay.
You can decide if you want to sign it yourself. It'd be great if you could forward it out to Mountain Village and Telluride and all the other elected officials.
Okay. Great. Thanks for bringing my attention to those.
Any other questions for Kim? Kim, we know you got an event to be at. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, I guess what I was hoping to get out of this meeting was to have enough discussion about the all electric code to get direction, further direction from Ridgway for our amendment draft. I know that when we spoke previously, we got the direction to definitely include some language related to all electric, but I wanted to see if we could, prompt that conversation, see if people have questions or what might come up that we could be prepared with providing information for further conversations.
So Kim, direction wouldn't come from this board. It would come from the town council. So, we can certainly talk it through, but the way I understood the entirety of the amendment package was that it'd be comprehensive enough for Ridgway to figure out which way it wanted to go based on that package and based on the options that were presented. So if I'm missing that, please correct me. But I mean, for purposes of tonight, this board isn't authorized to provide direction.
Okay.
But it is our charge to provide advice to the town council. So
Correct.
we will marshal, the issue. We're going to be presenting the town council, I think, this quarter or this next meeting or
This next meeting, yeah.
So coming up.
So we can talk about that
Yeah.
at the meeting for
So
sure.
we'll make that a topic for sure. And I agree personally with what Dave said about disassociating the net zero from all electric for the residential code. I think we're going to take those steps sequentially. We're going to go with a net zero for the town's facility operations, encourage net zero for the residential and commercial, but go shy of requiring that along with all electric. I mean, it's obviously a goal. It's going to be part of the larger picture, but I think we don't link those specifically in the code at this point.
I think that makes sense, and I would be in support of that at the state level, as well as regionally. Everybody has been in support of removing the renewable energy requirements for every building from the code, just recognizing that it's not always appropriate for every building in every location, and that it makes more sense to just require solar ready, or renewable energy ready, so that then it can be installed in the future if it makes sense. And there are exceptions for, like a building where it would never make sense to have solar panels on it. They're exempted from those readiness requirements too. So I think it makes a lot of sense. I just wanted to be clear with the language so that I knew what to support.
I did see in one of the presentations you sent, or it might have been the slide deck, that a linked with the net zero was either the local renewables and or through the electric supply. And that's, you know, kind of a broader way of achieving net zero. And that's something that we're gonna have in our roadmap, is that that's gonna be an option even for the town, is to participate with SMPA's Totally Green program, which is effectively through the electric supply. So that's another alternative to having locally sited renewables. I mean, we're going to encourage locally sited renewables where practical and financially feasible, but then offer that electric supply option as another way of achieving the objective.
We have had in the past, I think it's in Ridgway's current code, or at least, but I know it was in the past, a requirement for essentially purchase into Totally Green. At the time, it was green blocks before, and that was for all new construction. That is a proposed amendment that we are continuing to include in the amendment package for all the jurisdictions, hoping that some will still continue to desire or to add that to their codes.
Right.
Were there any other questions or concerns related to all electric or?
Thanks for all the work you
Yeah,
did.
this is great, Kim.
Okay,
Time, lots of time.
yeah. Yeah, it's a bit, but I'm glad that at this point, I feel like we have a pretty good library of resources related to all electric to help with the conversation. I know one of the conversations, if I'm recalling correctly, maybe this was with you, Dave, was that the Crested Butte information that they have for a cost comparison study was, I think, 3 years ago at this point, and it was specific to Crested Butte. And I can't, if I'm remembering correctly, there was the idea that maybe we do that same type of cost comparison calculation for the town of Ridgway to make sure that it's local, accurate, up-to-date numbers to help with the conversation at council.
That'd be wonderful, but a lot of work too. Is that realistic?
You know, one potential resource to achieve that, and something I was going to bring up, might as well bring up now while you're on, is we had lunch, the mayor and I had lunch today with ESG, which used to be Year Out Energy. They're an ESCO, an energy service company. They provide EPC work, which is energy performance contracting. They had the big contract in Telluride that ended up resulting in all of the efficiency upgrades for the school, including the microgrid for the school. And they're available and they want to work with multiple communities in this region, specifically with Ridgway, of course, which is why the lunch meeting. But if we could somehow find budget, and this is something we'll bring up, talk after Kim, but they could be a resource if we could pay them to go through this exercise and do that cost analysis, similar to what Lotus Energy represents in that respect, I think. But that may be a way for us, since we're a group of volunteers with limited time, is if we can identify a budget for achieving some of these very tangible initiatives, that we can put that before the town council to see if they're willing to either in this, you know, as a budget override for 2024 or as a, 2025, or as a future budget line item for 2026. This is part of our charge, is when we find something that costs money that's beyond the scope of our volunteer capability, that we can request a budget line item for it. Especially the broader subject for us is that we could look at doing this to work with the inventory, for example, the all electric inventory, some of the roadmap items that you've already put together, Dave. Anyway, we'll talk more about that after Kim's gone. But I'll put you in touch with them if you want. So Anthony Lamont and this woman, Hillary, we met, and they did a lot of work in Telluride, for the school district, including designing and implementing. They had a $750,000 grant from DOLA to go through. They replaced windows and added insulation and put in solar and put in the batteries and so forth. So that's their whole shtick, is energy performance contracting. And how to bring facilities up to snuff to some standard.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if this is the type of study that they would be willing to take on and update. I don't think it's a super complicated study, but it would take some time and resources to do. And I think it would be helpful to have that. I think the other thing that I've been thinking of that is that we've had multiple affordable housing complexes built in the region that are all electric.
Database, yeah.
And I think whatever information we might be able to obtain from how those were done on a financial mechanism. I know SMPA and Tri-State were a part of that as well, but just even on a construction side of things, disregarding the all electric, we have a lot of I'd say statewide and in general, and this is common throughout the building industry, but there is resistance toward things even such as improved insulation. Anything that costs extra as an upfront cost isn't always seen as a positive on the construction side of things or the homeowners themselves. If they are budget strapped or it's just seen as an extra code related cost. And so I think anywhere that we can prove and show that energy efficient construction and all electric construction is done in a very cost affordable way and has been done for these affordable housing complexes will help to sell that story on a local level versus just some state, other examples from across the state.
As differentiated from the operating cost savings, which would be clear, right? So there's two
Well,
components, there's the upfront and then there's the operating costs.
I think the full picture is what would be super helpful because I know that those projects don't necessarily cost a lot extra upfront and that then the operating savings helps to, explain the full picture of how that helps construction to the code make sense for people. And tangible examples from local projects would be really helpful to help counter some of the opposition to these.
Kim, do you have any visibility as to how Butte came up with their cost comparison?
Their local mechanical engineering firm that I actually used to work for long ago when I came to Colorado, that's who did it for them. They provided that cost comparison analysis, a resource engineering group. And they also do mechanical engineering for our region and across the Western Slope. So I don't know if they would be interested in hireable to do the similar type of study for us down here, but that is another potential avenue for updating that study to make it local here. Here, I would say that their primary projects for our region are the extra large homes in Telluride Mountain Village, more in San Miguel County, more so than in Ridgway. As far as where or what type of homes over here that they work on. In their area, they're more involved in the smaller homes because they're, located within Crested Butte. If that's helpful context.
Thanks, Kim. I like the idea of local examples, and that's something that is more locally doable, I think. Yeah, have something for people to see.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful, and it's, I guess, part of the information that I've been unsure of how to obtain at the moment.
Yeah, and I think probably the best way, if we can come up with a list of the all-electric homes that we know of, and then compile our questions and then go out to the owners and say, would you be willing to give us this information? It's a yes, no, are you willing to put this together for us? But most of them are gonna be similarly minded and might be supportive. So
The potential issue with using the two affordable housing projects, the Space to Create and the Wetterhorn, is that by definition, they were affordable housing projects, which means that they were looking at cutting costs as sort of the underlying philosophy of the build out, different maybe than just your typical residents that decided to go all electric.
Were they required to go all electric?
No,
Not necessarily, but they saw the light. And
Okay, so you think they would have done some cost
yeah,
comparisons?
I mean, they also got incentives
They
from
were
SCBA,
rewarded.
and we took some of the appliances out of the cost of construction, put it on the electric bill through this on-bill payment process, which I can describe later, but Kim's familiar with it, which was a pilot program through SMPA, which hopefully will be offered to all SMPA residents soon. The idea being that rather than compartmentalizing the cost of the solar and the air source heat pumps onto the cost of construction, which burdens the homeowner who's trying to apply for a loan, a debt to loan or debt to income ratio. They separated those and they were paid for by a grant through the Colorado Clean Energy Fund that then gave them a 20-year loan, and that loan is being repaid through their electric bill, separates those costs from the cost of construction and does not saddle them with the debt. So if it's considered a tariff on the electric bill, it's not
Cool.
considered debt.
Yeah,
So-
that's the company that I work for too, the Collective Clean Energy Fund, and I
Right.
on that on-bill program if you guys have any questions about it.
Good, I forgot you had involvement with that, yep. Well, we've done it as a pilot with the Matterhorn project and with the project out in Norwood, and I'm pushing SMPA to adopt that for all of their membership to have eligibility for that program.
those projects were also pretty heavily subsidized with local dollars, and they were actively encouraged, like really pushed to go all electric too. So
Right.
that was another piece.
Which is one of the resolution line items.
Right, right. Yeah,
Okay, do we have any other questions for Kim? We can continue the discussion and I can give her any feedback or anything that comes out of this or.
What's the event? I forgot. I know I couldn't make it, so forget. What's your
First-
event?
We're showing the Hypocrite, which we showed in Silverton last year. We're showing it here in Telluride tonight. So,
I want to talk about maybe doing that for our ribbon cutting for the Decker room too. So we'll touch base on that later.
That'd be
Okay.
great. You can follow up with me on that.
Okay.
I'll take on that. Thank you, Kim.
yeah, are you guys able to see my screen here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, I just called this up because this is the Crested Butte study. It's nothing complicated. It's just pulling in information of what different costs are for equipment. So I don't even think that it would be worth trying to hire an ESCO or obtain, grant funds or anything like that. It's a little bit of time and resources, but this is the very simple analysis of comparing natural gas to electric. This is what I was referring to that we might want to update and emulate for Ridgway specifically. So,
In the natural gas column, that's gas with electric, not just gas. Obviously, they had electricity too. But it's basically the non-all electric comparison.
yeah, this is just a typical gas boiler heating system.
Cooking,
Compared to an all
Yep.
electric. Yep, so the estimated energy costs would be the more difficult analysis down here, and how that scenario works, but kind of this part up here is pretty straightforward for cost comparisons, so food for thought, I guess.
great. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, let me know. Feel free to reach out if you have questions or other thoughts. We're excited that Ridgway is our main jurisdiction considering all electric, because it just seems to really make sense. And what I've heard from several different trades is that the electric ready is more challenging than just going all electric, especially on a mechanical engineering side of things. A mechanical engineer has to design, especially for larger homes, which may not necessarily apply in Ridgway, but they have extra design work that they have to do and extra things. And then the homeowner's also paying for the cost of natural gas to go into the house. So it's kind of a double duty. And the more I hear that, the more I think it makes sense to just try to go all electric as sooner than later, to help everybody with things. But so hopefully that's helpful information too.
So I forgot to contact you last time. There was a bunch of POW in Telluride, but I'll be out there skiing tomorrow afternoon after a meeting in Telluride from 11 to noon. So are you going to be on the mountain? Should we have a
I'll
meeting?
be up midday. So yeah, let me know. It'd be great to
Corona?
connect.
a Garano meeting, I can write off my guess.
I think it's gonna be a chairlift meeting. I'm not gonna sit at Garano's at all.
After skating.
All right, sounds good.
After skiing, come grab a drink with us.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Kim. To wrap up that, if you have any other feedback that you want to discuss, or I'm happy to read the all electric building definition, because we didn't really touch on that, and there are some things it excludes, like, like a fireplace, for example. Anything else you want to talk about all electric?
Where is the definition?
This is from the email that Kim sent out. I'm not sure if you were CC'd on it, but it says all electric building, a building that contains no combustion equipment or plumbing for combustion equipment serving space heating, with the exception of solid fuel burning devices that meet requirements in Article 8, which I assume is like fireplaces and wood burning stoves of this chapter, water heating, cooking appliances, and clothes drying within the building or property or building property lines, and instead use electric heating appliances for service.
That was from that slide presentation.
That was from the email. It's in the context of it, but yeah. The last paragraph there of the all electric definition from Crest Butte's code. Yeah, anything else to touch on that? I echo her that I think it's exciting that Ridgway could be all electric. It's pretty rad. Yeah, just makes good fiscal sense.
What do you think is gonna, I mean, my bias, is that a lot of our council will support this, but, what do you think are gonna be the biggest challenges, and how should we, something we should do or look forward to confront those?
That's a great question. Yeah, I do think, or I do anticipate a lot of support from the town council. I guess to answer the question, I posed a question about community engagement.
Right.
Not to state the obvious, that's always going to be my answer. Right now it's this is my word, but silo, right? You have the energy board code cohort, which is a combination of building officials and planners and some elected officials, other representatives from these jurisdictions, but it's siloed. All these experts, right? They're immersed in all this stuff. Well, what about Joe down the street? What about Vanessa that lives on Sabeda? Those folks have no idea this is going on. And so, not to beat a dead horse, I'm just saying, I think that's really important. Kim talking about the educational workshops in May 14 in Telluride, or wherever she said the next day here in Ridgway. I know those seem catered towards trade professionals and everything, but the Joes and the Vanessas, I think, should be invited to understand. Granted, are they going to be building a home? Is it going to impact them necessarily? Maybe not, but I still think it's a huge change.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think the community engagement aspect can't be overlooked.
So I thought Kim's statement that their information talking to, the stakeholders is that it's actually more difficult to do electric ready than all electric. And I can kind of see some of that. I mean, you have to kind of put in all this plumbing, which, you're not sure whether or not, if and when it's going to be used. I'm wondering if in this May 15th meeting, we can take a portion of that meeting to try to feel the builders, architects, designers out and see where they think the pinch points are for all electric, and get something from them.
Yeah, I think that's
Because
great.
they're all assembled right there.
And I can't believe I'm going to say this, and Terry's going to love this. Terry's been saying this for years. No, maybe not years, but he's been making that exact point for years. Why would you build it out for a later point when it might be even more effective, more efficient, more cost effective to just do it now?
I'll give an example from our house. So when we built our house, I had it plumbed for mini splits for air conditioning. So in other words, I put in the lines and I knew where I put the condensers and everything. I knew where I'd put the heat pump or whatever is going to drive it. But I didn't put it in because I wasn't sure we ever really needed it. So I spent money to do that, which I may never use. But if I do sometime put that in, it's gonna cost quite a lot more. So making a mini split ready for air conditioning, it's gonna, if I do eventually install it, it's gonna cost a lot more than if I'd done it. And I think a lot of the electric ready ideas are maybe similar to that.
But also delays your ability to actually achieve net zero, even in the 10-year time frame. So if you already plumbed your house with, 1-inch gas pipe and you put in all the necessary electric circuitry, and then there's a wake up from this homeowner that says, you're right, there's forest fires and the world is coming to an end. I want to switch over to all electric. Now they've got that investment and all that gas infrastructure they're not going to use again. So it's like, why don't you just leapfrog all that?
Right, that's another aspect of it, the gas infrastructure, if you're not doing it, so there's that. But I'm just using that example that if you plumb and get ready for it, that's in the end going to be more costly to actually then go ahead and implement it
Right.
than if you just did it.
Yeah, the retrofit's much more expensive.
And your example, I think, would be usually beneficial for folks to hear, at
I agree.
that workshop, or at all the workshops and subsequent forums. So that's great.
And
Is it always gonna be the case? Maybe not, but I mean, that's a really good example.
And I totally agree with you about the emphasis on public engagement, whether it be contractor engagement, public engagement, before we try to pull the Band-Aid off and implement this all electric requirement. We have to educate and showing these cost examples and showing the actual benefits, not only the short-term benefits, but the long-term benefits, because it's part of our strategic plan. It's part of our master plan to go to these extreme measures for the town. So the town has the ability to provide input to those master plans and those strategic plans. And this is just following in suit with those things that the town has adopted, but now the residents, even though they elect the town electeds, they need to follow suit and say, all right, well, we support what we've elected these officials to implement, but we need more information so that it doesn't blindside them, so they don't feel like it's being, the rug's being pulled out from under them. With the building community, the contractor community, they get this. They know that. That's the reason that all of these housing developments, including the one that's being finalized over here, is all electric. They saw the light and they saw the future without us having to require it. Now that we're going to require it, it's like, well, it's a no-brainer for them.
But the community engagement, I think that we're most interested in people that are coming in and building new homes. I mean, we're not doing this for retrofits.
Right.
We could encourage that, but the main conduit to reach the public who are building new homes that would be all electric are the builders, designers, and architects that are working with them already.
Individual influencers.
Right. So, I don't know that it does us a lot of good to go out in the public and tell them, explain the all electric code and the cost comparison, stuff like that, because they already have homes. It's the ones that are coming in and building
Well, I
that
think
we need to
you don't
reach.
need to find, it's pretty easy for people to complain. And I think to Preston's point, I don't think there's too much public outreach that has had backlash, usually if you state things simply. So I think your point is really well taken that yes, the people that are going to be directly impacted are going to be these contractors. But I like the idea of opening it up to the general public. And if they don't come, they don't come, and that's kind of on them, but then it's also like, well, we had actually multiple meetings on this.
To be inclusive.
Yeah, I'm not
It's kind of-
saying don't be inclusive. I think it'd be great to invite the public, but the people that you really need to meet are the people that aren't the people that already have homes going forward.
Yeah.
You don't want to blindside them, because if they decide, I don't know why they can complain, but if we get into a retrofit.
It's all about
issue.
demand. So it's either the homeowners demanding it of their contractors, the contractors are saying.
But I think a lot of
"We're
homeowners don't even realize it. They just say, I want to build a home in Ridgway or whatever. And they give it to an architect and an architect goes for it. And maybe they say, I like cooking on gas.
Right.
And, and that's it. And I think not only do we have to kind of hear from the architects, designers, and builders as to what the pinch points are, we need to encourage them with the information about cost, analysis and stuff like that, if they don't already have it, encourage them to work with our clients and push them toward an all-electric design.
Especially if we.
So if you're doing a comparison between gas and electric, why not print that out and include it when somebody applies for a building permit? and they can actually read
Yeah,
it.
we discussed that
Pretty
before and we.
freaking easy to
I
do.
think it'd be great to.
You have a little packet, and I don't see why we couldn't put that
Yeah.
together.
Well, and we can put on the website too. That's
Right.
just.
I'm
something
curious
that's-
about the May 14th and 15th meetings. Are they're not open to the public that Kim's doing?
Well, it sounds like they are. I
Some of
think
they are, but they're not maybe being advertised.
Well, that should be
David and I
something
would-
that we can advertise. Yeah.
It's not for the public, but I think that like all of us should, you know,
But I mean, if they could be either recorded and then the public could get on our website and listen to it, or there's some way that people could zoom in and somehow you let people know with your emails to town.
Yeah. no,
I mean, there's plenty of ways to contact people.
Right.
but I think we're talking about additional meetings for the public, you know,
Right.
which is more.
And that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, yeah, I think it should go beyond these workshops, you know. The luxury here is that we're not alone. Ridgway is not alone.
Right.
We have the Norwoods and the Tellurides of Mountain Village and San Diego County and Drake County and everyone who's involved are looking at the same initiative, right? We may not all adopt the same code package and amendment, what have you, but that's a big selling point too. Hey, everyone's, not everyone, but you know, we're all in this together.
regional.
Because it's a regional thing. It's kind of a big deal.
Right.
And painting that picture is gonna be important.
Which
And
is,
we can have our own sessions in here.
It's a planetary thing.
which is why,
It's beyond regional.
you know, some of the costing information stuff, it'd be nice if maybe Eco Action Partners would take the lead on updating that information, because that's something that all the different jurisdictions could use.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Including what kind of what to Dana's suggestion, an information packet that could even just be a flyer
So easy.
that could be handed out with every building permit application or
And people they could contact to talk about,
like, not just for Ridgway, it'd be interesting.
people to talk to like you.
The benefits of all
As if you
electric,
didn't have enough to do already.
yeah, the benefits of all electric packet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think all of us need to be thinking about how we can individually reach out in the community to talk to people, you know, so.
Well, not to belabor, but perhaps next month, I don't remember what, it's the first Tuesday, I don't know what that date is. Perhaps we can have an agenda item on there talking about those workshops and how to help get the word out, what communication channels we're utilizing. Maybe there's a flyers that have been developed at that point, we can help get them distributed. And then start thinking about our own sessions after those.
Well, and our first one is, you know, the Decker ribbon cutting. So if we had some packets or flyers by then, that would be good. Do we know when that's?
I'm gonna provide an update on that when we
Okay.
get to that section.
When we were fighting the paving of Amelia Street, we literally went door to door and actually sat down with people and convinced them that the paving of Amelia Street was a really stupid idea. So it's so easy to do in this town to walk around. It's amazing.
Well, the reality is. there's
And
no-
people accepted us in their houses too. It wasn't hard.
The reality is there's no way
Cookies.
to actually achieve net zero unless you go all electric first, because there's no other way to offset the use of gas.
Right.
If everything's all electric, then you can rely on your either locally sited renewables to directly offset your usage, or rely on the electric utility to do it through their supply. But when you mix gas in there, there's no way to offset that fossil fuel use, other than through some sort of carbon credit or something that's not very tangible.
Net zero
Pine trees
seems
and Amazon.
philosophical and all electric seems reasonable. Net zero seems like a philosophical reality that we all want, but we can get all electric.
Right.
I think net zero should be pushed to the side for
Or at least decoupled in this code.
decoupled for sure.
That, it doesn't mean that we don't adopt that as goals. And
Exactly.
We implement it first as, with the town as an example and say, look, we're doing it, you should follow suit. Here's how we did it. We'll become the working example for that. And of course, with the town, the first challenge is to go all electric with replace all of our fossil fuel energy appliances over time. Whether this is what we'll talk about later in the roadmap, but whether it be through attrition or through proactive, funding of some sort. But that's the challenge that we're gonna face in the roadmap.
I'm not sure if I should even bring it up, but has there ever been discussion of a town ordinance saying that we aren't gonna put in new gas lines in residential neighborhoods?
Not to my knowledge.
California has done that in a number of places.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at, the paving that's going on down here and the light industrial here and the future residential on the other side. Putting in gas lines there, if we're gonna say down the road that everything's all electric is a huge waste of money.
That's true.
And,
Whose money? The town's money or the
I don't know
developers?
who's money, but-
Well, yeah, developers' money, Black Hills.
Yeah, so I mean.
Black Hills will
why-
have a
why-
lawsuit against you in a heartbeat.
Yeah, why not consider, just putting a moratorium on any new gas lines to residential areas? I'm not sure I would go to business, but you could, but you might say that.
The thing is, there are some homes that just, well, it's solar actually that they can't do, like they're in
Well,
shady.
we are gonna require all electric for any new construction town provides, financial support for it. That's in our resolution. So that's kind of a de facto way of doing it. Sort of.
Yeah, I just throw it out. I just hate to see with all that going in.
You're right. It's a
Um,
waste of
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point.
metal.
I will say, I process encroachment permits, from March 15th to November 15th, and, generally speaking, we don't get that many, the last few years. We haven't received that many encroachment permits from Black Hills for new service lines. But
What's that
most of
mean?
the time for new
It's an
service line,
encroachment.
to tie into, an encroachment permit is required when you're excavating or encroaching into the right of way to do something like tapping into a main line, middle of the road.
Oh,
And so
I
like if
see.
there's a gas line in the middle of the road and they need to tap into it to do a service line to a new residence. There's just not a lot. Dave, you make a good point, though. I'm not an attorney. I don't know that I would advise against a moratorium. 'Cause
Yeah, I don't know.
I just Black Hills and others would have
The
be some
example-
exposure there. I
Especially
think,
with
but-
Trump's
Yeah,
resident.
and it's interesting when I listen to my Spotify, I get these commercials, you need to pay the money, but I get these commercials and the cute little girl says, we need all energies for a clean energy future. Tell your town that we need natural gas.
Right.
As part of
That's on
the.
TV.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Got her little cowboy hat on.
Oh, yeah.
They make it sound.
Little cowgirl.
Like
Yeah.
natural gas is.
It's clean, right?
Right.
You don't see it, it's clean.
Yeah, it's out there being advertised.
See,
By-
cable TV and other TV channels, they have an ad and they show pictures of wildflowers and, meadows and elk running.
Right. We need natural gas.
Clearly lobbying effort.
Wow.
Right.
The impetus that I've mentioned, I've seen some communities in California adopt that moratorium, but it wasn't based upon net zero or the, green leaning objectives. It was because of fire. protection.
Yeah.
They didn't want new gas lines because of the,
Yep.
the drought and the incidence of fire.
Is there any
caused by
data
gas
on that?
explosions.
Because I'd love to.
Probably.
Yeah.
There's a lot of data in California. I used to work for Pacific Gas,
Electric lines
who had the San
cause
Bruno.
fires too.
Yeah, San Bruno is
San
one of the
Bruno.
first towns.
I
to-
worked on that project like
Oh.
the week after it happened.
Nice, okay, here's your source.
Because,
So
yeah,
Be careful with gas lines.
something that we put into our talk about,
Yeah.
here's another reason, another benefit,
Yeah,
just
it's a really
like
horrible
another
solution.
benefit for electric cooking is not having gas byproducts in the air, So I think,
That's
yeah,
true.
CO.
So, so I just noticed the time and want to be respectful of your time, sorry. We always have some really good conversations and only have like 2 hours for these meetings, but, anything else for Siobhan?
Anything else you want? I can give you just some like real quick high level updates on what's happening. We're doing the Green Grants expansion is happening. That will be coming to Ridgway. That means the successful Telluride program which does, you can apply for, usually it's between 5 and 10,000 are the typical applications. And if you want to install a heat pump, yes, there are amazing subsidies from SMPA, but maybe you can't afford the remaining $3,000 or whatever it is. And so you can apply for a green grant
Are these residential business?
for residents and business.
So who's doing?
Towns?
Towns, no.
Who's
So
doing-
currently the green grants are in Telluride, Colorado. It's a successful program
So
there.
if somebody was interested, they type green
And
grants.
Green grants, if you, they're
.com
on,
or
they're right now, they're on the Telluride website. If you go to the town of Telluride.
Okay.
But we'll have a new website that's expanding for the region, but it'll be, at, San Miguel County, Ridgway County, and San Juan County. There's various pools of money. Eco Action administers these currently, and so we will administer the regional expansion. But yeah, the idea is just to get into existing homes. How can we lower hurdles for people to do energy upgrades and efficiency projects? So that will be coming.
Some of that applies to the Team Gold effort too. in
Yeah.
Silverton. Yeah.
The Silverton pool of money will be coming out of the Team Gold project. And yeah, that will be happening. We'll be planning it starting this spring and summer, and then applications will start in the fall. We will bring more information to you guys at the next meeting so you can help us spread the word. Help us with marketing, mouth to mouth, word of mouth marketing, to let people know that they should apply for a green grant and get that, boiler upgraded or whatever they've been waiting to do. So that's happening, coming on the pipeline. I've been working with Terry and some folks in Norwood on grants, just trying to get funding for all these great initiatives and ideas we have. So please, if you hear of grant opportunities and you're like, man, we just don't have the capacity to tackle that, please send those grant opportunities my way, or to Eco Action, and anybody will get them to me.
To expand on that, Yvonne was very helpful in helping me write a $10.7 million concept paper for a grant for the major microgrid in Silverton.
Hopefully we get it.
Included a battery that's 2.5 times the size of the one that we were awarded $2.5 million for Ridgway. Be a 10 megawatt hour battery, a 2.5 megawatt solar system located hopefully on the EPA mine cap site for the Gold King mine. So that unusable land will have a floating array on top of it, connected to a big 10 megawatt hour battery to power the whole town of Silverton for 4 hours, similar to the 4-hour battery that we've already been awarded a grant for from Ridgway. And
It's exciting stuff, yeah. But we recognize also that grants are not super stable at the moment, not only because of what's happening at the federal level, but because what's happening at our state budgetary level. And so we've been meeting also to kind of think of how we can diversify our funding streams. And so I actually met with this woman, Kathy, today, and she was whispering names of deep-pocketed people in the Telluride Mountain Village region. And she said, there's a bunch of people in Ridgway. And so if anybody wants to make introductions to me, and I can work on just procuring funding so we can implement a lot of these projects. If because we're trying to kind of think of a philanthropic wing of Eco Action Partners as well. Right now, we're largely state funded and with local municipalities. So please, reach out to me afterwards, and I would love to hear about any connections or ideas. Even doesn't have to be, if you don't know them, you're like, hey, I just know that person's a climate person and has deep pockets. Please let us know, because we want to get funding and to get this stuff going, especially to do things like community outreach. I'm applying for a grant with Norwood that could actually potentially be also used here in Ridgway. And largely to do things like community engagement, like, hey, we have this climate action plan, come to this meeting, we'll have food, we'll have childcare, get a sticker and put it on the solutions that you're wanting to implement, and if you don't like a solution, tell us why, and let's talk about it. Because I do see community involvement as critical. I've seen that in my previous career too, is how much, and again, I feel like there's no level that's too much involvement from the community.
Well, you'll receive, Eco Action will receive a formal invitation. One of the items that we're going to talk about later is a community outreach for the ribbon cutting for our little microgrid at our community center.
Heck yeah.
We're hoping the SAB will have a presence, ECO will have a presence, SAPA will have a presence. We might show the
hypocrite. Yeah, Molly mentioned that. We would love to do that.
Microgrid, have refreshments and so forth. This will be one of two of the community engagements that we have on our work plan for the year. So we would definitely want you guys there.
Heck yeah.
And to that end, we really appreciate your continued presence in our SAB work here, because as I mentioned before, we're a group of volunteers and you guys do this for a living. And so there's a lot of help that you can give us, especially if you can, finance it the grant support that you have.
Yeah, I'm
which
looking for.
Enable
sure.
your position. with
Yeah,
Eco
I'm a grant
Action.
funded position too, so. All right, happy to jump to the next item,
Great, thank you.
unless anybody has any other questions they wanna.
To come.
More to come. Next item's about y'all's presentation, quarterly presentation, update to the town council next Wednesday, April 9th. As you may recall, this is a newer type goal now in the strategic plan about doing quarterly updates to the town board.
So I think we identified one in this meeting that we had already thought, we hadn't specifically talked about, but somehow talk about the concept of all electric with the town, at least introduce that somehow so that they can start thinking about it. Be nice to introduce that meeting.
I see the first topic that I think we should present is the support of the resolution that's going to be read.
Right, I'm not doing anything in particular order. I'm just kind of listing items. So that one, the resolution, and then to support that resolution, the roadmap and the timeline that we've come up with so far.
A third might be just what I introduced to Siobhan, which is the idea that we're going to hold an event at the community center, which microgrid now is up and working, by the way. So it's installed, it's operating. Anytime you go into the Decker room, the lights are powered by the sun and the battery is backing it up so that it's functioning. We're about to close that project out with the town. The contractor is waiting for a final inspection, and then Preston has already drafted a press release about it. But then the next
Okay,
step
so
is
there's-
that ribbon cutting ceremony.
For the entire building?
No, just for the Decker room.
Why just the Decker? Why not the
Because
whole
the
building?
entire building, because I got a grant to back up basically it was through the microgrid for community resilience grant, same grant that did the big battery for the town. And it was focused on turning that space into what they call a resilience hub, which is a gathering place.
I see if
During an
everything
outage.
goes down, you
Yeah,
have.
so in that room, in fact, part of the grant is to pay for device charging stations and some signage, and they're looking at maybe a screen that will, have a rolling calendar, and during an outage, that'll be the only room on the street that'll be lit up. So it's a place to come and gather and stay warm because the heating will work. To do the whole building has been a huge, gigantic expense. There wasn't.
Well, that's pretty ironic when we're asking everybody to go electric and you're saying it's gonna be a huge,
They're already all electric, the whole building.
Oh.
Yeah.
oh, you mean solar?
This is for the microgrid to back up the loads. That one room will remain lit during a power
I get it.
outage.
I see.
Yeah, to do the whole building would have been a huge
I
expense.
see.
So Preston, how much time do you think we'll have to present? What would you
Between
think
15
for?
and 20 minutes.
Okay, so I think,
It's not much, but what I would recommend real quick, David, is, perhaps you start with something like this. I mean, I think you should use this time to organize a presentation and kind of, I don't know if you guys want to
right,
figure out how to put a PowerPoint together and such, but instead of just picking and choosing things, it may be good just to remind everyone, hey, here's all our goals. And then you can pick and choose from there.
so I guess what I was sort of working to, and I think that's a great idea. I think we need to be pretty selective about what we use that 20 minutes for, because you have a standing update, update, where you can just talk about.
Which is very informal. It's at the very end of the meeting when everybody's exhausted. They're
Right, so all the things that are not, we don't really require any action from them, but they're just more informational. Maybe we leave for that update, that standard update, whereas our quarterly ones are, hey, this is stuff that's, you need to put some thought in and, provide some feedback.
Well, I think to Preston's point, whoever's going to give this, we'll talk about that in a minute. The first item to present is, hey, from now on, we're going to be giving quarterly updates. That's the first topic. And oh, by the way, this is our strategic work plan, which the town has now adopted inside their strategic plan. So that would be probably agenda item 2, and then maybe pick a couple of these to kind of drill down on. So this is what we're working on in this order. Of course, the first is going to be the resolution, which will be presented in the town council. Where will that be relative to this presentation?
Yeah, it would be nice if we had it set up where it'd be right after. I haven't been able to organize the agenda that way, so we're looking maybe half an hour after the presentation.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Of the resolution. So
The resolution would be about half an hour after this presentation.
Oh, okay. So you can introduce it then. that, you know, in the
So-
next.
Talking about the resolutions.
So we would introduce the we would introduce the resolution here.
Maybe we'll have a work session on it, or not a work session, but
No,
I'll discuss it.
Yeah, because,
Or formal.
because you all will already be before them talking about all this stuff and can, actually take a minute or two to talk about the resolution and what it would effectively do. It won't even really be
And the
any for me to talk during when the resolution comes up for them
Right.
to consider adoption. It's already been put out there, what it's about. The board can ask questions if they have any. I
It'll
can
be in the
reiterate
packet.
anything.
They'll have, the council will have read it prior to the meeting.
Because that seems like it would be the most important thing to communicate,
Mhm.
focus on, because if we can get that resolution adopted, that
Big
would be
accomplishment.
huge
Yeah.
accomplishment.
It sure would be nice to put it right after the presentation. There's an art to doing these agendas, so, I'll try, but it's hard. So,
Sure.
but I'll send it out to everybody on Friday evening once the packet's ready to go. So,
Okay, great.
So to that end, I think we, quarterly presentation should introduce the fact that we're doing quarterly presentations, introduce this as the adopted SAB work plan that they have, the town has, agreed to put into the roadmap, and then maybe just focus on 1 and 2 and say, we're just going to touch on these two. In the next half an hour, this will be before you for adoption, and we are, we drafted this, and then you can introduce either through a slide or just discussion wise, the fact that the next step is for us to establish this roadmap. I think that probably is enough for 20 minutes, I would think. Unless.
yeah, that's a lot to count.
Actually, it's 1
but-
through 3 there, right? And with the quarterly.
But I would say, obviously 3 is being touched on, but 6, we just came off talking about 6 at length. I would highlight number 6, just given how close we are to having you all consider the package and advise the town council, provide a recommendation for them to consider. I mean, I think that's within the next several months for sure.
Mhm.
In fact, you could briefly touch on 5, which is that we're planning on holding the ribbon cutting as our 1 of 2 outreach events.
I think,
We're gonna create-
I think introducing 6 is at this meeting presentation would be a good idea to get them aware that we are addressing this all electric, and we'll have maybe in the next quarterly update, hopefully we'll have some costing information, stuff like that, some more information, some draft of a information packet or whatever on that, but introducing it at this meeting and not spending a lot of time on it, but just because I think they need to start thinking all electric.
Well, and even going as far, I'm just thinking out loud, even going as far as saying, you can bet that this board is going to be recommending all electric code package.
Section number 7.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
however you want to frame it, I think that's a perfect opportunity for y'all to maybe take that lead, take that step to get before them. So I don't know if that's what you're
Just so you
saying.
know, we're going to be recommending all electric.
Like,
And-
shocker.
And next meeting, we'll have, our reasons and, the background for that, whatever. But I agree, sort of this meeting, it's 1, 2, and 1 and 2, 1, 2, 3.
I think it's 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7, but I think we probably need to put together a PowerPoint because we don't have much time
Right.
to stay on topic. And
Yeah.
we need to have bullets. We need to, kind of concisely go through this.
I can help with that. I can volunteer.
Be great, Sheridan. And I do recommend that to all, folks doing presentations and such. It is Tuesday. It would be great to have a PowerPoint for inclusion in the packet by, I'll say 3:30 p.m. on this Friday.
All right, Sheridan, I'll work with you on that.
The town council meeting is next Tuesday?
It's next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday,
The
okay.
packet, the agenda packet materials go out Friday.
Okay,
Now, if for some reason, there's a time crunch and PowerPoint isn't ready, we could always figure it out
We should,
early next week, but there's some time.
we should be able to,
Yeah,
can
we
al-
could do that.
we can always edit it slightly, but
Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
Then there's the choice of who is the presenter. I definitely want to make sure it's not me this time at least, because I'm gonna sit back and be part of the council and watch.
right?
do that. In other words, I don't want to have to recuse myself from any.
I think over time, it'd be good for all of us to present, just so that they get to know us and so that we get comfortable with working with them. Since this is the first, I guess, and I'm volunteering him, but since this is first, I think maybe our chairman should at least
Agree with that.
introduce it and maybe call on some of us if you want, but I think
Sure.
that makes
It's
sense.
good for us, everybody to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we could rotate through the presentations in
Sure.
the next quarter.
Right,
That-
right.
I agree. I think it's wise to have the chairman be the first one to introduce the concept. we're doing.
And for example, if you're presenting the roadmap and the timeline and ask question and I'm there and I can answer the question or whatever,
Sure.
have as many people there as possible.
My suggestion is rather than drilling down and actually presenting the roadmap, that we just introduce the fact that we're working on a roadmap, just in the interest of time. I mean, you might show that up
Correct.
on the screen, but not actually walk through.
Yeah, no, I don't think,
No.
and I'm not sure they really would care that much. You know, the details of the roadmap, but being able to show that we have a roadmap and that we have a timeline that we're working on. The timeline is maybe a little more important in that we need to get some kind of indication from them whether or not they're okay with the timeline, especially if we're trying to do the resolution net zero by 2030. We have to get some feedback, some feeling from them, you know, whether or not.
Well, I
that's
think
doable.
if we present the resolution net zero by 2030, they will be giving us guidance. And then we can, you know, if they approve that, then we can go back. And with that, we can say, okay, if we're gonna be net zero by 2030, then we come to them and say, this is what we think it takes. You know, here's the timeline we foresee. What do you think? You know,
Especially if we identify in the roadmap any need for budget items that they're gonna want to know about, whether it be for an override in this year or something to.
Oh,
for the
yes.
next-
I mean, there will be budget items for the next 6 years if we're gonna do net zero.
So maybe just introducing the idea that we might be presenting you budget items in the future.
That's a
Yeah,
great
that's-
idea.
That's
I
on,
think that's
that's on the
really good.
timeline.
By the way, I don't know if you saw it, Dave, but there is a net zero net zero roadmap presentation in that email that
Oh, really?
that
No,
we've sent to Preston, who sent to us. It's actually a PowerPoint. It's 39 slides long, but
okay, great.
just so you know to look for it.
For who developed that?
Did you get that
Kim,
email?
Kim, yeah, I relayed it. I think Dave did too earlier today. It's from Kim Wheels. And I think it was requested Butte. It was some
It's a
engineering
regional
firm Lotus.
roadmap,
I
so
think put it together. Yeah, regional type road.
mostly Pitkin County.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that'd
That's right.
be a good one.
Yes.
It's kind of good to like start from scratch without looking at that and then compare with what we have.
Theirs is actually pretty high level compared to what you've already put together.
Really? Mine was not very high level.
What's specific to the town? This is a roadmap for 10 different communities,
Oh, I see.
regional.
so Sharon and I will toss this back and forth, and then we will share it with the group. Please don't reply to all, but we'll, you know, try to get it to everybody for comment before we go live with Preston on Friday.
Perfect. Anything else on,
I want to reintroduce that, and just further eliminate that meeting we had today with this energy service provider. It could be an organization. I suggested to them, they might even want to present to the SAP what they do as a service, just so we know that there's resources out there. And they've got local examples. They've worked in Telluride. They've had contracts. So it might be an interesting group for us to hear a presentation from, just to see what capabilities they have and how it might plug into us accomplishing some of these things. You know, they're not free. I mean, it's a paid for service. Actually, much of how they make their money is through energy performance contracting. So they work to get the funding for it, they finance it, and then they make their money based upon the savings that they actually implement. So there's no upfront costs associated with it. It's just the nature of their business model.
Where's their home office?
They're all over the West. They just merged with the company, but they have an office in Montrose, and they have on the Front Range. The
that's
people that we worked with today came from the Front Range. So they're Colorado based. or at least they have a Colorado office and Colorado presence. But we met with the Southwest Regional, manager who was trying to find work out here. The other thing that John and I and that Preston signed today, but is a letter to preserve the IRA tax credit that is being forwarded through the Mountain Town 2030 group with all the communities that are involved in that. So that's really important for all these projects that we got the grant money for. The tax credit is 30 to 40% through an IRA funded tax credit that currently all of us individually are eligible for. If when you put in a solar system, you can apply for the ITC, but it precluded nonprofits like the town, like SMPA, from being able to access that money, which restricted the ability to do these big projects. So this was a proposal that Bennett actually put through into the IRA that he supported, which is a game changer, which is enabling SMPA to do all these big projects. And it also is something Preston is going to be applying for the microgrid for the Decker system, which will provide up to 30% of the total project cost. And it's right now it's on the chopping block through this resolution budget process. So the town is supporting that, but I thought the SAB ought to be aware of it because it's all about sustainability. These are the only updates I had.
Thank you.
Other than the microgrid is up and running, yay.
Yeah, that's
It's the
great.
first one of the 6 projects that we got awards for. It's actually operating now.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Well done.
It's cool.
Well done.
So if there's nothing else on the quarterly update, this is really the next item, just going through
Well, I had
each one of
something.
these.
Whatever happened with the idling? Did anybody?
That's on this,
Number 10, 12.
Number
Number 12.
number
Oh.
12,
No, I think.
Oh,
it's
no,
number-
number 4. So you'll be the.
Oh, that will be in front of them also?
No, this is
Oh,
this is our
for
work plan.
today. Oh,
So this is,
oh, okay, sorry.
every meeting we go through and see where we are.
These
Gee,
were
thanks for
goals
telling
for
me.
2025 and.
Okay, I didn't realize. I thought that was something that was printed up a long time ago. Which it was.
So Dana, I think to answer your question, after we get number 1 adopted by the town, that's probably the next focus to put in front of the town is to reintroduce in a formal way that.
Well, Sheridan was gonna write a resolution and I missed 2 meetings, so I don't know if that even happened.
No, I think it's why your name is on it.
No, I don't know if Sheridan was
Oh,
gonna
Sheridan,
write.
I'm sorry.
Sheridan's online, so.
I know, I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if she did actually write that resolution.
No, I haven't written anything yet, Dana, but
Okay,
we could talk about this.
okay. Yeah, I dropped 2 meetings, so it's my fault, but we can get back on it. Okay, thank you.
That could be one of our next takedowns as the SAB is to, get that codified that, have us collectively review that resolution and then put it into Preston's camp to introduce it at one of the upcoming meetings. I think there was a draft of that already put together some time ago, isn't there?
I wrote a 10-page letter that I gave to the town council. It should have been
With a
into
letter.
a draft, but I don't know what happened. Who knows?
I don't remember seeing a resolution draft.
No, they never made one.
Well, I think what Terry's suggesting makes a ton of sense once we as a group make our way through 1, 2, what have you. Dana, I think we can circle
Yeah, good.
around and resurrect those materials and put it through this process.
So it should be something that's pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
I would think.
But one thing that was mentioned a couple times, just to make sure we don't forget to talk about it, is the proposed event in the Decker room for the microgrid. Terry, do you have thoughts on?
So when we were talking about June as a possible target month, and when I talked to John Clark, the mayor, he said, don't do it during bluegrass. So there's a window we have to avoid. Then there's another event, which is the ceremony to introduce or to actually show the mural. Is it with the mural?
Yeah, it'll be a ribbon cutting for that.
So the mural will be in place at that point?
Yeah, by early June.
So maybe we look at either late June or early July for this ceremony. So that what I had tentatively envisioned was a 1 or 2 hour gathering, that we might have the movie that, the POW movie. We could have presence from SAB, whether it be tabletop booths, SMPA, the SAB, Eco Action Partners, SAB,
There's so many acronyms.
SEB, that's another thing that ECO works on, too many acronyms.
Too many acronyms. Say it
SMPA.
all.
And this is just our opportunity as the SAB to really introduce ourselves to the community and use the ribbon cutting as sort of the platform, the canvas for that. Have a little bit of, I'll put together a presentation on the function, or with Preston, on the function of the microgrid and how it's going to convert the room into a resilience hub once we're completed with that, which is the gathering space for during emergencies. And so this group can give more thought to what that ribbon cutting would look like and how we can use it as a tool for the SA to introduce the SAB, introduce the website, and most of the town probably doesn't know about that yet, so we could
It's a nice website, by
walk
the
through
way.
the
So
website.
you've seen it
I looked at it, of course I did.
on Saturday? So you saw the new one?
Yeah. We looked at it at the office.
Okay,
I
because.
didn't look on
Because
Saturday.
this-
I didn't look at it, but
It's gone
this
viral.
week.
Because
You're
I think
famous.
it's just on Sunday, it's when I published the new,
I just looked at it on Monday. That's
Okay.
today.
okay,
See, you're already.
Today.
all right. All right, Sheridan, we did it.
Traffic.
But
Yeah, the site looks good. Can I ask a question? Is there any funding for this event or what's the? Cause I feel like if you want to bring people in, you gotta bring like music and booze and things in.
Right, that's a good question.
Well, and that's what we're here to talk about. Like, what are the logistics? What's the scope kind of thing? And to answer your question, yes, the town could put forth some money to make certain things happen. We just need to understand the scope.
Refreshments and
Yeah.
maybe, I don't know about music, but it'd be great to get.
I mean, you were at the housing open house the other day. I'm not saying it's gonna be like that, but I mean, promoting it and having, maybe booths and spin-offs based on how that was. I mean, that was a
That's a good idea.
great use of the space. I thought that housing open house. So,
Maybe we could have some sort of a youth thing, a presentation that's geared towards the children, or have some, just to help bring families in. Whether it be a face painting thing or, whatever entertains kids in a 1 or 2 hour.
A drawing for a free car.
What? Drawing for a free car?
Yeah, electric.
Okay.
That work. And it'd be a
Not a
Tesla.
Tesla.
Somebody's donated Tesla.
Have a drawing
Maybe
for,
we could do a painting on the Tesla. Like a-
we could have a drawing for the Tesla stickers that you can put on your car now, the anti-Elon Tesla stickers.
Angela has about 100 on her Tesla.
Can I, cause I don't want
It's
to
BMW.
pass by that recycle compost.
Yeah.
Whatever day.
Yeah, I want to get that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do we have a date for that now?
we do, it is
26th.
Saturday, April 26th.
Oh, darn it. I'm always.
And
out
that's a
there.
recycle compost day, and then there's a separate cleanup day.
That is town cleanup day, and some communities do a cleanup day where there's folks that walk around town and pick up trash and stuff. This one's really, and that does happen here, but it really revolves around this lot back here behind the library. David, is where we put up roll-offs, including a big roll-off for metal. And residents know this well, but they just come in droves and just throw trash.
So it's Saturday, April what?
26th.
26th.
Including the Alpine is sponsoring the electronics recycling.
Yeah. they're-
Same day?
Same.
And where's information on this? Is something up on the website on?
There's a flyer. It's on the town website. There's
Okay.
a flyer. Actually, it's not on the website yet. We just got the flyer done.
Including.
It'll be up on the website, but the flyer's being circulated.
Okay.
But to add on to what Terry was saying, Alpine Bank has put on in the last few years, it's separate own event, but it's in conjunction with electronics recycling. New this year is Ridgway County Public Health Agency. They're gonna have a booth with e-cigarette and vape disposal bin.
Oh,
and
great.
Educational materials on how to properly dispose of those.
Awesome.
Shouldn't be throwing that shit in the trash, I guess.
No, we shouldn't
Well,
be
not I
putting it
guess,
in
I
there.
know you're not supposed to be doing that.
Oh,
And then mulch, we'll be giving out mulch again. which was Very popular last year.
And all this is on the flyer, or are there separate flyers with all this?
Good question. It's all on the flyer.
Okay.
It's all.
We should
And-
put that on the website.
Yeah, and I'll put it on the events page and link to the flyer. And were you saying there's somehow I thought there were two separate events, but that's just the
No.
one, is that
That's
it?
one of it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
And I guess I thought there was a town cleanup and then the electronic recycling were separate, but it's all,
Yeah, it's in
Under one.
conjunction, same,
Okay.
same location, everything, which is pretty cool. But it makes for a madhouse about 9:30 in the morning.
so when will the flyer be up on the website, on your website?
Probably
Okay.
probably tomorrow.
Okay.
Wednesday, yeah.
Okay, I'll put a description in our events page and link to the.
Perfect.
some of us,
The mulch was really good. It's, you know, all the ground up Christmas trees and limbs that they collect the town, they chip them up and let it mulch and turns into a future fire. But the mulch, I used a bunch of it for my garden last year.
some of us had brought up the idea of fluorescent bulb recycling at the event, but sounds like the flyer is made and I'm gonna be out of
We can
town.
modify it if we need to, but
Do you want to try to do fluorescent bulb recycling at the event? I mean,
not if you're not there, dude.
yeah, that's the thing. If I was there, I would do it.
You do battery?
Because I can get rocked funded,
Ooh,
but
I don't know. That's a good question. We don't take the batteries for the roll-offs, but Alpine Bank might take them for, I don't know.
They used to. I
They
don't
used to.
think they do.
You know, SMPA, if you've got the little.
I have so many
You
batteries.
can take the SMPA, they,
Any battery?
yeah, well, not the car batteries, but.
Do you have any like battery,
Duracell.
little battery, Duracells?
Yeah.
Oh,
They used to-
great.
they Used to advertise it, now they do kind of do it quietly.
Oh, thank you for sharing.
Don't tell them I told you.
Oh, yeah. What do they do
All
with
you
them?
told me, Derek.
What do they do with?
Take it to the office and say, hey.
Yeah, but what does SMBA
Oh,
do?
I don't know.
They probably just throw them away. Yeah.
They-
Pour it in the river.
Probably do. Oh, I don't know about that one.
Well, Christina, you should take a look through our work. You weren't here when we developed that. You should figure out where you might want to plug in too. I'm happy to have you take number 11 if you want.
So are we done with the Decker community
Scope.
thing, the plan? I mean, we'll work some more on it, but are we ready to move on past that?
Did we pick a date though? Because remember, Bluegrass
No.
Pancake was not a good date.
You're still
Throughout the
picking a
dates
date.
for the,
Oh, no, yeah, we're still looking at, we were looking at June. There may be some conflicts with other events. I would think either real early June or late June.
Who's going to determine? I mean, who's in charge of setting the date?
Oh, yeah.
Us or you? Or SMPA or?
Looks like there's a
I think
date.
it's fine to this group. though.
Dave and Terry.
We don't have to set if we're looking at late or sometime in June, maybe we have an item on next meeting's agenda
Gotta
to
find
Set the date.
set the date.
Okay.
At that point, we'll probably have a better handle on when like Bluegrass, is it Bluegrass?
Bluegrass is the 19th.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess we already know that. Like, it was not a good example, but if there's other stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, John specifically requested we don't overlap with Bluegrass because he's out of, because he camps in Telluride for that.
Yeah,
Days.
yeah.
Okay, well, as soon as we have a date and some, as soon as I can get on the events page.
yeah,
So Preston, can we look at the town's calendar for next meeting and try to just secure a date and then we can start really planning it?
Yeah.
I think we got another month to.
Yeah.
Get.
Sounds good.
Deal about it.
and speaking of dates, I just wanted to ask you, Preston, so August 9th is our date, our second event, the EV ride and drive, but I think the theme this year needs to be electrification, with the EVs being part of that. So we,
With a Tesla campfire burning pit.
Yeah. so we have the venue across the street. I've talked to,
This one.
yeah, the parking lot there. I talked to,
Joan.
folks, I forget,
The Renaissance Fair.
Carbondale, and they wanted to do a presentation on electrification. You said this room could be available that day for presentations.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless
Is
it's
there a
booked,
way
how
I
it's booked, so.
should reserve, or who would coordinate that?
Yeah, I mean, me or Deb, but I can make a note. You said August 9th, that's a Saturday.
Correct, Saturday, August 9th. Yeah, so
And that's the EV ride and drive.
EV ride and drive plus electrification. So, the goal would be not just EVs, but electric lawn tools, heat pumps, you know, the whole. And it's, yeah, it's a good way to, you know, as we're talking about electrifying all electric homes and electrifying everything.
I'm told those ride drives have been really successful. I haven't been to one yet, but I'm told you put on a great ride drive.
We, you know, we get lots of cars. Is trying to get the shoppers in that, you know, but we are doing it during the Rendezvous Festival, and I am.
Oh, that's Rendezvous.
That's Rendezvous Festival weekend, and I'm talking with, you know, them to kind of coordinate so that we have a little bit more coordination this year.
Coordination and audience.
Exactly. Yeah. So how do we funnel people across?
You know, I was half kidding, but maybe that you could have a Tesla owners PTSD sensitivity workshop or something. How should we as the public treat people like you that have a Tesla that did it for the right reasons?
I wonder if we can get approval from the Renaissance Fair to park one of the Teslas or one of the EVs here, so that people are walking through the fair see that with a sign, you know, want to drive this or whatever.
Maybe out in the.
Because we have those signs all over the place, and I think largely people ignore those because. But if you have something there that, oh, wow, I could drive an EV,
Right.
and, you know.
And this year we're gonna give you one of those signs on the front.
Sandwich board.
Yeah, sandwich board.
Right.
You're gonna walk around.
Dress me up in a clown costume.
All right.
Interesting. Hitler.
So to answer your question,
So I'll get those up on there.
replacement idea.
And I can modify the EV ride and drive event to include electrification.
Yeah.
Dave, I'll check to see if, sorry to interrupt. I'll
Sure.
check to see if this room is available on August 9th.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know why it wouldn't be unless Ashley and
Any progress on
the
it?
folks at Weehawken are sure use this for the event, but I don't think they do.
I don't think so either, so, yeah.
Replacing
good.
the turf out here.
Yes, I was part of that.
Yeah, okay.
Might be nice to have,
President talked
um,
about it.
Okay.
He had a group come.
Are you calling it an electric fair?
I haven't decided what the name is gonna
I
be
think you
this
should
year.
call it a fair,
Um,
electrification fair, and maybe have some face painting and some fun stuff.
yeah,
Fair
some-
kind of sounds like more fun than,
Right,
and you know, maybe we could find an electric, what are those things called? Wheel, Ferris wheel,
Ferris wheel.
yeah.
yeah, if you can find.
Or
that
people
for
in
me.
costumes, scoop like bear
David, you're talking with the Renaissance people, all right?
costumes.
I actually did go out to Chatbot AI and ask them for, you know, a list of, what would you call an event, you know, and it gives you a big list. That's what I did last year when we came up with it.
What brilliant ideas did they say?
Chatbot AI, for instance, they suggest things like, green tracks ahead, you know, because we're having it over at the,
That's terrible.
Is there any of the trains electric? They're all fossil fuel.
They're all awesome.
Oh, that's too bad.
Dave, when you're talking to the Renaissance Fair people, I think we talked about this, but if we could have a presence, if the SAB or the, you know, fair or whatever can have a presence with a little bit of a tent where we can hand out electrification information and stuff like that, rather than forcing them to go there. You know, basically make that the place where they go to drive and to, you know, that has a big presence here and direct them into the building for presentations and direct them over to the EV ride and drive for driving.
Mhm.
That'd be huge.
I'll ask. All right. What else do we,
Well, I wanted just a little bit of input back. I did put together the timeline, and it's all very basic, you know, timeline for the roadmap. And I just wanted to kind of talk about that with a little bit and just get a little bit of feedback. It's pretty raw and pretty high level, but did you get my email with the PDFs for these? I sent you 3 PDFs.
So I've been in the field all day, so
Did you have access to your email here?
No.
Oh.
Can try to go get it if we need to,
Um,
or can you join the Zoom? You can-
I can't hook up to the internet here for some reason.
The internet's kind of janky right now.
It cut out. I had internet. And it's gone.
The town.
Ridgway free Wi-Fi. Yeah.
Yeah, it's only got one bar on it.
Yeah, I wasn't able to connect. It's done.
Well, I can go get it on my computer.
Interesting, I wonder why.
Yeah, I'm not getting anything
I
right now.
mean, this has cable to,
Fiber.
yeah.
No, we've had trouble with it in one of the last town meetings.
While we're waiting for that, do we want to talk about anything else on that list?
He's installed the G.
Oh, good.
I bet he'd come.
Other than, Christina.
Well, and we also should get him on the website.
Yeah, I can take out a look.
He's really a
I just need to read more. I need to get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he has,
Solar
he's got a, I can't remember the name of his business.
Okay.
But he's a really nice person and he does a really good job too.
Excellent.
Way more
Yeah,
structured.
we'll get him on the website.
I've used him, he's put in 3 heat pumps now for us.
Excellent.
For us to be able to screen.
Excellent, yeah.
What
He's
type of-
What type?
Yeah, for space heating.
Air to air.
In the
Oh,
restaurant.
so how many-
Put them in mini splits.
mini splits?
2025.
I guess that's what he's put in.
Most things town is working because this committee is a subcommittee of the town.
No, he knows this, he knows what he's doing.
Adopted that list, knowing that they don't have to do anything other than watch us do.
And he's a nice person too.
I just wanted to say, I hope you've all looked at the website and it's very apparent to me why you don't have a retired physician for the website together. Why
Well,
you
I'm
hire
only one.
somebody like David and Sheridan to put it together who, have.
I'm a retired mechanical engineer, so it doesn't get any closer than a
You're a
retired.
writer. You and Sheridan did a tremendous job.
Can't wait.
Yeah, it's really a wonderful website.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks,
You-
thanks, Dave. We took everything you had and just kind of rearranged it and moved it around, and it was really.
And proof. Good job.
Maybe just I can pull it up on the Zoom just to show a link. You haven't seen it.
I think the nicest thing is that there's a link to it from, it's on the town website now.
It's on
Right.
So it looks like you're,
Oh,
it looks like,
hard to find it, yeah.
looks like a town's, it looks like it belongs to the town, which was,
Well, it
was a
does
goal.
belong to the town. We did kind of work for the town.
I love all the photos too. I think we should continue to populate
yeah.
as many photos.
I will take credit for the.
Yeah, the photos are, many of the photos are still Dave's. So.
That one was not mine,
But yeah,
I would have picked a blue sky. That was.
I do think it's nice that it really elevates the town's involvement in and commitment to sustainability. With this first page, it just shows everything the town's doing and it's pretty impressive. I mean, you look at all the town's doing and it's good. It's pretty good.
By the way, I sent a link to your link to the Mountain Town 2030 that wanted a small paragraph right up on Ridgway's efforts around sustainability. And I included the link in there. So it's going to get linked to 90 other communities.
Good, we better go back and proofread it, I guess.
So is this what you were looking?
Yeah, so one of my action items from the last meeting was to put together a little bit of a timeline to go with the roadmap that we talked about at the last meeting. And so this is my attempt at this, and it's all pretty high level and pretty basic, but it was an attempt to try to start thinking, okay, if we're going to try and be net zero by 2030, how do we go about doing it? And one of the biggest problems is this all takes resources to get this all done, and the town resources are pretty jammed right now. And so we talked about, maybe getting budget to get a consultant in here to sort of drive this. And I don't really have an opinion on that. What I decided to do for this roadmap is just say whether or not we use a consultant or we did this stuff ourselves or some of this stuff ourselves, how would we get started? And so basically what's on the left-hand side are the basic tasks. I kind of augmented a little bit for what was in the roadmap. And I color coded a little bit with sort of one-time tasks. And then I think a big part of making this successful is to identify some pilot projects and get those done and see what we learn from those pilot projects before we go whole hog into going through and replacing everything else. So the green is the ones that, one-time tasks, like creating the inventory, figuring out what we have, finding out what we have, finding out the age of everything, figuring out the the lifespan of things, so we can begin to look at what we have to replace. And I think somebody brought it up last meeting, I hadn't thought about, but establishing some baselines so that we can track as we start to replace this stuff, how much are we cutting down on our carbon usage? So I see that as something that we would do, this year for last year, and then every year after that, looking at the previous year and tracking our progress with.
I think Eco Action Partners has a.
Yeah, and that,
Well, they had a baseline for probably 2021 or.
Well, for the
We
community,
actually-
they also have a.
Annual
business.
greenhouse gas inventories.
and
Okay.
that's when
Yeah, which
I
we're happy to share.
Okay, so good. We can, great.
That's when I volunteered for last meeting, and I have worked with Eco Action Partners, Kim, and specifically Kendra is the main one,
Kendra
pulling that
collected.
together. And I have all that data.
Okay, I knew you had done, I didn't realize you were doing it for every year. I thought it was sort of you'd done a
I think it used to
baseline.
be kind of, now we do it every year.
Okay,
So,
all right, good.
and I requested both gas and electricity because we would expect as gas decreases, electricity goes up, that we want to be able to follow both and look at our historic.
It would be nice to have it though for the town at a fairly granular level. I don't know how.
We have by account, so about, every building in the town.
Okay, all right, good.
I have that.
And transportation
So,
and out. and stuff.
I can briefly present that next meeting, just
Okay.
to give you an
Yeah, that'd be
overview of
good.
where we are.
Okay, so great, that's already done. Check that off. But so I made a couple of assumptions. One is that I made the assumption that we would be doing much of this stuff ourselves, the green stuff and the purple stuff this first year, because we lose a year if we wait to, get budget for and get a consultant. So I just made that assumption. It's maybe not a good one because maybe we can't do it ourselves, but I made that assumption this timeline. The other assumption I made was that we're going to try and get everything done by 2030, which is, another assumption. And based on that assumption, I decided that we can't really afford to lose a year. So that's why I tried to fit in the pilot. Try to get the pilots done by the end of next year. So we have some information about, how that is. So those are the basic assumptions I made. And I won't go through all the details here, but it's pretty aggressive and it would have to start here in May.
And I think, throwing this, not throwing it up, it sounds terrible, putting this into the presentation for the council, even if you just not going through it line by line, just to show them that, we've already established.
That's a great idea.
And I think with the assumptions that I'm making, that we can't afford to wait, wait a year.
Right.
So whether or not we end up trying to do this ourselves, which maybe is not possible, or we use a consultant to help drive this. If we're going to do that, we got to get a consultant online now, which means maybe I don't know how to go about that.
A phrase that you might echo, and it's actually in the resolution. I don't know how easy it is to pull it up, but there's a phrase in there, at the speed at which it deserves or something, or the urgency in which it demands. So we might look in the resolution and continually quote that phrase, which is in the resolution, which gives the sense of urgency to this process.
So then, if you want to put up the next one, that was 20, so I did this out. So basically, after we get through the pilots and we kind of figure out what we've got and how we're going about it, we'll learn a lot, but then the idea is over the next 4 years, we pick a set of projects and we execute on those each year. So each year, we have to get funding approval from the town. We'll want to probably review and adjust our replacement schedule each year based on what we've learned. Each year we'll want to, again, apply for grants and see if we can get, grants and rebates for things. And each year we'll have to go through the RFP type process. And so anyway.
So
This
that
is
the
just-
roadmap is a living document essentially.
Yeah. But I want to take a first stab at it just so that we have something then to go and change and amend. And my idea was to try and get this kind of in front of the council somehow. Maybe we don't show this, but to give a sense of urgency that if we're really if we're gonna do this, we gotta get going on it.
I think it's probably wise to just flash this up in the presentation as one of the slides. Not to drill down into the details, but just show that there's a lot of thought being put into this already.
Yeah. Into the future.
Yeah, just the one slide.
Mhm.
I don't think we need 3
Yeah.
slides, but
Right.
yeah.
You can mention that this extends out for a couple of years beyond this, but
Yeah, I mean, I guess the point is this is the first 2 years to get us through the pilots. And after that, it's just ongoing implementation based on whatever our implementation schedule.
this is a little bit of meat on the bones of the whole resolution, really.
It's a visual.
So if you want, Dave, you and I could maybe spend a little bit of time before Friday going through this a little bit and see if you think it ought to be modified at all before.
No, I don't think we want to get into weeds with the
Details.
town council on this. We just need
Sure.
them to know that it's fairly aggressive, that we need to get started with it, and we're already thinking about it, and we could flash that up. And so, yeah, if you want to just send that to Sheridan and I, that would be great.
One of the things that we need to decide among ourselves is whether or not we're going to dedicate, well, how much resources we're willing to dedicate to doing this and how much we need to rely on the town and maybe an external consultant. We have to kind of come to that.
Well, the other question is how much resources the town can dedicate to this, because the town's doing so many different things. And so what really, we're gonna have to do some give and take, and we'll have to figure out how we can get this done with the least impact on the town.
Is it fair to say, Preston, that there's not going to be staff resources to work on much of this, so that if we were identifying resources that's not this committee, it would be a third party that we come up with some budget for?
Yeah, and it'd have to be, contracted third party, just given bandwidth at the staff level, of course, just volunteer board, so. I think this is a great starting point, great visual for sure, like we've been talking about, well done. Been ambitious when you get down to, like 11 and number 11 specifically, I don't foresee getting anyone on board this year, but that's certainly subject to changes given it. I'm not even going to spend time talking about all the stuff we have to do. David's just getting at it. It's not a good excuse, but we have to use them sometimes. But I see this as a living document too, right? Like, okay, well, we're not going to get some of this stuff done of the mid to later part of 2025. Well, how are we going to compensate for? How are we going to restructure it, given that we have a shorter time frame now? So I think this is a great visual.
I guess for me, the main thing is if we want to get going on pilot projects in 2026, we have to get enough information to be able to put something before the town council for a budget.
That was my next, yeah, exactly. That was my next.
And how we jigger this
Start
around.
talking about it, now or next meeting even. What are those pilot projects going to be? Start framing those. What are the scope? What do we need? What's it gonna cost? to Terry's point, staff, volunteer board, or independent contractor doing that work, so.
Even if by the budget cycle, which starts for us, what, September, October?
Yeah, in July, August almost.
Yeah, even if we're identifying a placeholder budget, don't have a specific cost.
And that's, you know, that's what that's what I anticipate. I don't, I actually, I put the issue RFPs prior to like finalizing budget, but I almost realized that we're not gonna have that, but we should have enough information to be able to say, we're gonna need this amount of budget basically for these 3-4 pilot projects that we're.
That would be a major accomplishment for the budget cycle, is to have some sort of a scope and identified budget that we can get put into the budget process for acceptance, even if it's not detailed. It's like, we want to set it, we want 40 or 50, that whatever it is, you know, consideration for this.
I don't want to overpromise eco action time, because sometimes I do that, but also please reach out, because there might be, if there's a pilot project that this group identifies and you're like, we really want to do this, we might have a grant that falls into that already, you know, we might already have one. There just might be able to be capacity and support from us. So please, I'm not promising, but please reach out and ask.
Would the grants apply to a town project or?
No, no, just businesses, residents, or groups like HOAs. You know.
Okay, we're asking.
Yeah. That's number 7. You're
Yeah.
or part of that research.
One thing I was gonna say is, I mean, again, can't say it enough, this is pretty darn cool. This is gonna inform a lot of what this might look like next year for 2026.
Mhm.
Not all of it,
Right.
but I mean, some of it, at least, or maybe a good chunk of it.
Well, and I still think, I mean, we need a high level data collection. And yeah, whether Stephen or somebody could give us a couple hours just to point us to where's the gas furnace, and we could sit down and figure out what kind of gas furnace this is, and you know, how old it is and what papers, but just some way to start some initial data collection, which is very helpful for the town too, because you need a replacement schedule. You need to know when things are gonna,
Right.
you know, so it's not something that you wouldn't otherwise need, you know, it's a helpful thing.
You know, and that's where my mind goes is, you know, having a third or independent contractor coming in to do everything at one time. You know, there's a cost associated with it, but then it can be set up comprehensively where we get estimated costs for replacing all that stuff, you know, and then that, you know, that's a tool that we can use during budget cycles, you know. I'm not saying that we can't do that in-house, but you know, it certainly is nice.
Somebody has a contract to perform that scope of work.
Exactly, and then they give you what you need with a little bow on it, and it's already done, and all you have to do is, I mean, certainly money weighs heavy, I'm just saying, it would be nice, certainly would be nice.
I assume like S&P's electric accounts, we have an electric account for every facility. You probably have a gas account for every facility too, right? Residents, or is it just one big gas bill for the town?
No, there's a gas
Yeah, it's gotta
account
be-
for every building.
Gas meter on
There's a meter on
Every building has a gas and electric.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and we'll talk about that next meeting. I'll show you kind of what the gas use is in the town and where the town is using gas.
Where it's leaking.
Good, yeah, and I think, you know, the high level data collection, it would be great to hire somebody, but we're talking next year's budget cycle to do that.
Most likely, but
Yeah.
I can't imagine it taking too terribly long if we have
So-
a team or, you know, a team of folks dedicated to, I mean, we're not that big of an organization, you know, we don't have that many facilities and such in the grand
You
scheme.
know, I guess sort of I envision this is if we were doing it, we would spend, a couple of us would spend a little bit of time coming up with a collection spreadsheet or whatever, figuring out how we want to collect it and how we want to categorize it and everything. And, you know, what information we want, get that all set up in advance. And then we would meet with the appropriate town staff that would have that information. And we would just plug in information from, and, you know, so a couple of days of, you know, a few days of meetings with the appropriate town staff. For doing the inventory. After that, then we have to figure out whether or not are we the right people to be researching solutions? Maybe not. But doing the inventory and figuring out what we have and what we have to replace and what we're not going to replace, seems like that's something that we as a group.
Yeah, I think we might be able, if we promise not to take more than a couple hours of Stephen's time, we might be able to approach him and just see how we might be able to do it in a way that it minimizes any time that he would need to spend. And it would also allow us to think about this, because if he'll be aware of any, you know, areas where we have failing infrastructure.
Right, which would be good.
Which is
pilot project
approved to do this year.
Yeah.
First apple.
Yeah.
You made a real good point last meeting, Dave, that the last thing, or we would really like to avoid replacing equipment with, you know, like equipment that's going to be, like if a water heater goes out, we don't want to replace it with another gas water heater. We would like to, so knowing what's getting old and, you know, putting together our replacement schedule,
Nutrition list.
we have something to work against once we have that replacement schedule. And that replacement schedule will be based on, you know, costs and stuff like that, but also what's likely to fail when. And having that done as soon as possible is really useful, because then we can say, okay, well, it's going to cost us more to put in a heat pump water heater, but this is the time to do it.
Right.
Consistent with our resolution.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say the mechanism that we'll have is that resolution to ensure that we're not gonna do a gas water heater.
Right.
Right.
But knowing what is likely to go out next is good, because sometimes if it's an emergency situation, you might not have the,
Oh, right.
yeah, you might not have the time to put your heat pump in and, you know, transition to it.
Already identified what's next.
Right.
That's very helpful. Yeah. Good.
Anything else? Before
We are over time.
over time. There's one item left. That's from the last meeting.
I move to approve the minutes of last meeting.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
What's your first vote?
Good job.
That's it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for letting me join. I hope I get to come again and
Yes, please do.
again.
Thank you so much. Bye, y'all.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Jared.
yeah, just please reach out with any kind of initiatives and we can try and be in alignment.
You're always welcome.
So I like that.
You know, I
idea.
deliver, Terry.
I like the idea if EAP can kind of take the ball.